Dakota Uyar. I'm the Associate Director of the John Papajohn Entrepreneurial Center here at the University of Northern Iowa, and I am here to welcome you to this Reaching for Higher Ground panel on female food entrepreneurship. The Reaching for Higher Ground project aims to build a stronger campus community, one more accepting of people of different viewpoints and backgrounds. The 2013-2014 theme for Reaching for Higher Ground is food. The John Papajohn Entrepreneurial Center here at the University of Northern Iowa is pleased to be part of the Reaching for Higher Ground Committee and to have worked with the committee on this panel. First, we would like to take this opportunity to tell you about some of the exciting Reaching for Higher Ground events coming up. February 24th, Growing Forward, a presentation by Kurt Ellis, creator of the Peabody Award-winning documentary King Corn, will take place from 7 to 9 p.m. in Lang Hall Auditorium. March 4th, Reaching for Higher Ground, Healthy Eating Around the World. The International Student Association will host an event featuring different foods from around the world. Recipes will be available 6 to 8 p.m. in the Center for Multicultural Education upstairs. March 11th, Paper or Plastic and Other Food Myths. I am pleased to host this panel for you, which will cover a number of topics including which is better, paper or plastic? Is it healthier to use a cloth shopping bag? Is a ceramic coffee mug more friendly than plastic or styrofoam? Are plastic microwave containers healthy? What can companies do to reduce, recycle, and reuse? These and many more questions will be explored by a panel of experts including Dr. Catherine Zeman of the Recycle Reuse Technology Transfer Center, Joe Bullock of the Iowa Waste Reduction Center, and Mike Smith of Hy-Vee, Bill Snitker of Hockenberg. 3:30 to 4:30, this same room in Mocker Union. All events are free and open to the public. For more information on any of the Reaching for Higher Ground events, you can visit our website at www.uni.edu/higherground. Next, we would like to thank the members of the Higher Ground Committee for their work on all of the Higher Ground presentations and today's presentation and panel discussions. Will the members of the Higher Ground Committee please stand? Thank you. We want to thank you, members, for selecting such an exciting theme this particular year of food. Yay. We encourage everyone here to attend some of the other Reaching for Higher Ground events and engage in the discussions about food this year. We would especially like to thank Dr. Nadia Korobova and all her hard work for bringing this panel presentation together. Next, we would like to thank many departments here at UNI without whose efforts this presentation would not be possible. The Office of the President, the Office of the Provost, University Relations, Mocker Union, and UNI Educational Technology. Finally, and most importantly, we would like to thank our panelists. Chris Butker of Barn Happy, welcome. Vicki Dunn of C'est La Vie Bakery, thank you, Vicki. And Jen Ray of Cookie Crave. Thank you, Jen. We have provided pens and cards for you so that you can write questions. And we have 2 microphones. Patrick, Lori, would you please stand so individuals know? So you can get your questions asked using one of the microphones that Patrick or Lori has. Please leave any unused pens and paper on your chair as we will use these for future events. Food samples have been generously provided by our presenters and will be available at the end of this particular presentation, as will good conversation with them. Would Randy and Lori please stand from our center, and Bart, if you are in the room. For any of you students here in the audience that are interested in starting your own small business, please see my colleagues, Randy or Lori, and Bart when he does come, or myself, and we would be happy to answer your questions about starting a small business. Thank you. Here comes Bart. And then Patrick and Chelsea, would you please stand? Thank you. So for any of you who are faculty, staff, or community entrepreneurs, our colleagues Patrick and Chelsea from the Regional Business Center are able to help you with starting your small business. Thank you. We are recording today's panel and the audience questions, and we will be making this available on our website at www.jpec.org to help you entrepreneurs. We're ready to begin the panel. So we'll begin with Chris, asking each entrepreneur panelist to please provide information on herself and what inspired her to start her business.
Well, it's fun to be here today, and hopefully some things that we say will kind of fire you up or make you interested at least to keep exploring this avenue of food. So I had a upbringing that was kind of interesting. I grew up on a small farm just west of Des Moines. My father was a dentist and my mom was a homemaker, and a huge garden and lots of time in the kitchen and 3 sisters. So I was raised with a lot of kitchen time. My mom's passion was nutrition. I veered a little bit from that in my adult life, as you'll see by my samples. But I was just really comfortable in the kitchen from an early age. It was a lot of what we did kind of for fun when we were bored, if not in sports and stuff. So right now I have a husband, Tim. We've been married 22 years. I have a 19-year-old son, Ike, and he's at another state university just south of here. And I have a daughter, Adrian, who's a junior at Cedar Falls High School. And they're both very much into sports and stuff like that. I got probably my interest in starting my own business came from my husband being a minister. And when we had children were small, I was home with them the whole time. And our budget was very, very tight. And I knew that I wanted to be able to do some sort of job so I would have we have a little more margin in our budget. And so we live on an acreage just a couple miles west of town. And when our youngest one was 4, we'd actually been praying about this for a couple years. Like, I wanted to do something, but I was pretty passionate about being able to get my kids on the bus with a good breakfast, and I wanted to be home when they got off the bus. And my degree's in art, so that really kind of limits you a little bit on what you can do. A lot of people really weren't thinking about buying my nice painting, but it's a really fun major in college. So anyway, actually just kind of after praying about this for a year and a half out of the blue, one night, I felt like I just had this little thought that popped into my head about taking an old dairy barn that my husband had full of hogs and turning it into a store. So there's a good business idea for you guys. Bleaching, lots of power washing, lots of scraping, and so that's kind of how Warm Happy was started.
All right. I was born into an entrepreneurial family. My father and grandfather were both cheesemakers. I'm from Wisconsin, and so I literally grew up in a cheese factory where my father was making big 200-pound wheels of cheese. And as a child, you know, we didn't have a typical upbringing. We spent a lot of the time in the factory playing, and you know, that was normal to us. So learned a lot about the cheese business. After college, my husband and I joined the family business, and I was in the cheese business until 2007, and at that time my life changed a little bit. I was divorced and found myself thinking that I had absolutely no skill whatsoever, not realizing that I had been a quality control manager for 20 years in the dairy business. So at that time my youngest child was headed to Chicago. And so I looked for a job in Chicago and worked for a snack food company as a quality assurance manager for several years. But in the course of that, this company, the snack food company, would send me to great things. I got to go to some really fun food shows and take some chocolate classes. And when I was at one of the food shows, I kept seeing this booth for this school called the French Pastry School in Chicago. And I would find myself just You know, I would just stand there and watch and think, wow, that's so awesome, I wish I could do that. And in 2011, my husband got a job at UNI, and I knew that I was going to be moving to Waterloo. And I finally decided, you know, after looking at the French pastry school for years, I enrolled, and I thought, you know, I'm going to be the oldest person in the class. This is ridiculous, but wasn't the case. Actually, it was there were many different ages, and I would say the average age was probably 30 to 35. And it was a great experience for me. It was life-changing for me, though. I had to be on the train. I lived in a suburb north of Chicago. I had to be on the 5 a.m. train, which meant I had to be at the train station at 5 a.m. To be in Chicago by 6:20 and be dressed and ready to go to class by 6:45 in the morning. It was a really intense experience for me, but I graduated in June of 2011 and moved here that fall. And once I got here, I didn't really know how I would fit in. I still am trying to figure that out a little bit. But I had been kitchen certified, and now I do a few farmers markets, and I do private business for people out of their homes. I do pastries and cakes and chocolates, and I brought some chocolates today. But that's where I am.
Hi. I grew up in the kitchen, kind of like Chris with my grandma and my mom. We both had 2 large gardens. I remember doing a lot of weeding, and I decided I really didn't like the gardening aspect of it, so I went more towards the baking part of it. And so that's what got me into little doing that with the ingredients and the recipes, and I just loved it. So I continued that passion through, you know, I even my college roommates, you know, every job that I've had, I've always taken in cookies to people, and it's just a true joy for me. And being able to start Cookie Crave was awesome because I have 3 boys and a husband. I've been married 21 years, and I have 3 boys, Jace, Grant, and Breck. And it's been a wonderful experience for them as well. They are learning the craft of baking and washing dishes, and they may not say that that's, you know, but for any ladies down the road or whatever that I'm looking at, your daughter-in-laws, I can feel like, yes, you taught her to do dishes, you know, because so it's been a really nice family-oriented business, and that's really what I wanted, was something so that I could stay home, be able to be flexible with them, and still be able to be at every event that they're in, and be there for them, but still be able to do something that I love to do and can be creative and, you know, can make different, you know, just make whatever I want that I feel that day or whatever. But it's been a fun road to try with kids, and the cookies are. I haven't had anybody complain yet, so.
Let's start with Chris. What is your favorite part of your business?
Well, there's a few, wow, I could sing now. There's a few things I really like about it. One is I really like my commute just down the yard to the barn, and that I was pretty family focused too, that my kids, when they got off the bus, if I wasn't back up at the house yet, they could zip down there. So that was probably what kept me at it. I didn't feel like I was sacrificing my family. The actual business, what I love, are the people. I feel so much energy from I have 12 gals that work for me, and they're all very positive, and even if I'm a little tired or feel like, oh, wow, it's just been a lot, you know, I can walk in the barn and I'll be there for 10 minutes and I'll feel like this energy just coming into me. And the customers that come out there, you know, nobody really just stumbles into the barn because we're off the beaten path a little bit, so people come there on purpose. And so they're looking forward to a positive experience, and they bring a positive attitude with them 99% of the time. So I think just being around the people, and I love hospitality. I love creating a space for people to enjoy. And so being able to provide quality treats and lunch and good coffee, that brings me pleasure too.
Thank you. Vicki?
I think for me, it's the creative process, and you know, one of the things I make a lot of, I make bread, just because I can take it to the farmer's market, and there's just something so wonderful about making bread, and when you put it in the oven, and the smell of the house, I just enjoy that. It's just therapy for me, and also, like Chris, it's customers, you know, and when I first moved here, I knew no one, and you know, and I have loyal customers, and it's so much fun. The people that come every week, and the feedback I get from them, it's really nice. Especially being a new resident, you know, just moving here and not having a circle or, you know, a group of friends already built in. It's really nice to see familiar faces every week.
Thank you. And Jen?
I think my favorite thing is being in the kitchen by myself and being able to bake, and it's just so peaceful, and when you're making something that you love, and then being able to share that product with somebody. I absolutely love just watching people's faces. That's my biggest pleasure, when they pick up one of my cookies and they have no idea, you know, even what it is, and then just watching them in their eyes, you know, I get great joy out of seeing that. It just, you know, makes you feel, you know, very just confident, and just excited about, you know, doing new things, and so I get a lot of, I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Jen. Vicki, you mentioned that the bread was something that you really, really enjoyed. Now, I've heard that you use cast-off grains from that. You want to explain a little bit to us about that?
One of the things I've been able to do a lot since I've moved here, I've been able to collaborate a lot with people. And one of the people that I met early on in my bread making was someone who was doing brewing, Guerrilla Brewing. They have a small brewery over in Rudy's. If you know where Rudy's Taco, they have a little brewery. And we had a conversation, and he asked me if I could use his grains. And so I did. I started experimenting, and I used his grains in some bread. But the best thing I made with the spent grains were Bavarian pretzels. And it was just kind of a fun experiment. And so I don't use them a lot. I don't use them regularly in my bread, but it's just kind of a special occasion thing that I do.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Chris, I saw the Iowa list of 100 things you must eat before you die, and your raspberry coffee cake is on that list. So has this brought... So everybody, it's one of the 100 you must eat in Iowa before you die. So obviously you have to go to Burn Happy and have that raspberry coffee cake. Has it drawn a lot of people to your business? Have they come in from that? Or are you using it in promotion? This is entrepreneurship, folks. So are you using it in promotion? You want to tell us about that?
Good news, I brought it for samples today. Save your trip out. Okay, and that article was a few years old, and what was hilarious about that was that people would be like, they would bring the article in, and they're like, all right, Peggy, we only have 48 things left. And they're like working through the state, crossing things off their list, and I'm like, the day I have that kind of time, I will be so excited. I don't know, I'd probably be bored. But anyway, so that when people come to our counter, and because everything's homemade, and it's kind of overwhelming, and maybe 3 or 4 things look good to them, and they say, oh, what's your favorite, you know? And I always like stuff with coconut, so I usually head them that direction. But I'll say, well, you know, the raspberry coffee cake made the list of 100 things to eat in Iowa before that. And they, oh, I'll have that. So it's just fun. It's I'll tell you a little bit about it. It's a lady from our, that I knew right away from our church. She's been making this for me she's going to do it again in my 12th year. Every year I just go, Jane, you think you could, because her cakes are like perfect every time. You know, they look like they could win a blue ribbon at the fair. And she loves it because her kids don't are gone, and her husband is gluten-free, and she still gets to bake and do something she loves, and it's just a win-win. So anyway, but what's fun about it is in the batter, there's sour cream and butter. And that's one thing I've told my bakers from the start. We're in a barn that was built in 1925. We're not using anything fake. This is real food for real people. So butter, sugar, no sugar substitutes, no butter substitutes. So, and then you can taste that too in the product. So the cake part's really moist, and then she does a raspberry ribbon. And she also has uses the same cake, but does like a lemon cream cheese ribbon as well, because some people really like lemon. So anyway.
Thank you. And Jen, you and I have had conversations about your cookies, and I know that you use butter in your cookies. And so what's with the butter in cookies? You want to give us a little education here?
I think it's probably from my grandmother. She only used butter, and so I grew up in my family, that's all we've ever used, so I don't really know how to use anything different, but I just love the taste of the butter. It just makes, the cookie, it just gives that melt in your mouth kind of feeling, and I think it just kind of bursts in your mouth sometimes too. So I think the butter is just a better way to go, and I just think today too with everybody having, when you go to the store and you have different types of cookies and they have all kinds of preservatives and things like that, I think that kind of makes my cookies stand out even more when we don't have, when you have the real butter and then, the homemade stuff. I just think it makes all the difference.
I'm going to ask a couple more questions, and you be thinking of questions that you would like, and we'll turn it over to the floor shortly. So, you're entrepreneurs. We know about rewards of entrepreneurship, and I would love for you to talk about what you think the rewards are for being entrepreneurs, and also cover the challenges of being entrepreneurs. So, pros and cons, good and bad. And we'll start with Jen this time. We'll work our way backwards.
I think the pros are you get to decide your schedule. That was really important to me. And you get to decide everything, which can be a con as well, because sometimes when you don't know what to do, but for the pros of just being able to find something that you're passionate about, and usually when you're passionate about something, you're usually really good at it. So I think that's a wonderful thing of entrepreneurship. I kind of wrote some things down, so I'm kind of going off of in my head, but I know when I went to, when you don't be afraid, I think is another lesson that I would put out there, because that's another thing with entrepreneurship. You just go out there and just give it your all, because you will be rewarded. It may not be exactly the way you pictured it, but it will happen. Some with the cons of it, trying to figure out how you make the money. I think that is a very difficult piece. When you're an entrepreneur, you have so many pieces of the puzzle that you're trying to fit, but that's one of those things that you've just got to grab a hold of somebody like Catherine or Lori or Chris that already knows and get their input. So those are a few, of the cons that I can kind of think of.
I think for me, the pros, I'm a multitasker. I like to have a lot on my plate all the time. And being an entrepreneur, you're kind of like a juggler, and you have all these plates spinning up in the air. And it's really, it's a great way to learn to prioritize and how to organize yourself. And I think I've become much better at that. But I would say, for me, a con is, I think because of my past, I have a hard time turning it off sometimes. It'll be 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, and my husband will be like, I think you've been up since 4. I think you can stop now. So for me, it's turning it off sometimes. And another con for me, or challenge, is figuring out the business of the business. You know, I can make bread and chocolate and pastries, you know, all day. I love that. But when I actually have to sit down and write a business plan and do all of those things, which, you know, you and I has been very helpful, you know, there are great resources, but that's a challenge. And, you know, and it's just, I would say that's my biggest challenge right now.
Well, I can say yes to both of those, all that stuff. The hardest part for me in the beginning was, well, you have this business, and if you're paying a lease, now none of us are, because we're all working out of property that we own, and we refinanced our house so we would have money to remodel the barn, so we didn't have an additional payment, so I could keep my hours short and doable, so I could not feel like I had to sacrifice the homemaking piece of my life that I actually really enjoyed too. But you still have this feeling of, I'm putting in a lot of hours, and I mean, if I'm going to be working for free, I might as well be out riding my bike. I mean, we like bikes, especially when it gets nice out. So you have to figure that out. And what it was for me, the hardest part for me was probably like the third, fourth year where we're getting busier, gradually getting busier. Most of my advertising is word of mouth. I do very little of anything else. So it would grow just piece by piece, which was perfect. And there's that cusp where you maybe have 3 employees, but you really need 4. But you think, well, I can do, you know, typically if you're starting a business, you've done every aspect of it. You're the accountant, you're the dishwasher, you're the baker, you're the sweeper, you're the PR, you're the everything. And you're thinking, okay, well, I can do a little more, because if I don't get paid this year and I'm spending this kind of energy, I'm going to be so disappointed. And so that went on, and then I remember it was probably the end of the 4th year, and I'm only seasonal. I go 10 months, so my season goes March through December. And I remember we always kind of evaluate, my husband and I, at the end and say, what do you think? And I said, if I don't make a dime this year, it's okay. I have to have more help. I was just like, and you don't really, because your heart and soul is in it, and you kind of actually like the work, you don't sometimes even realize how fatigued you are, physically, emotionally, mentally, because, you know, like these gals were saying, it's hard when it's kind of like you've given birth to this child, and it doesn't need milk, but it needs like everything else. And so it feels really personal, and you want to see it work, and you're kind of willing to do whatever. And it was hard on our marriage. I mean, there were times when Tim would say to me, when am I going to get like my wife back? And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't know. It's really hard. And okay, I'm an art major. And so like the money part's hard for me. So you know how I'm doing my books? I don't even know if they still sell them. You guys are going to think I've got bad problems. But I would buy like that paper ledger. It was like very large. And I would write down salsa, truffles. You know, I would have my food items, my non-food items, everything with a pen. And then I would come in and go through, and I would handwrite all my receipts. And for the first 4 years, I didn't have a cash register. That was another thing that really stressed me out. Like, what if somebody comes in and spends $12.87 and they hand me a 20? You can laugh. It's sad, it's funny, it's pathetic. Well, you've got a calculator, and you're good. I'd never counted change back, okay? So I'm thinking, so I just used a cash box and a calculator for the first 4 years. And it was slow enough, and it was doable, but then I would come in after I'd handwritten all my receipts, then I would come in and transpose all my receipts into my paper ledger. And year 6, and we were making money and stuff, but not hand over fist. But we never had a year where we didn't make some money. And Tim would say, and Tim actually has a business degree, and he had an accounting minor. And he'd go, babe, do you think we're making money? And I'd be like, well, yeah, because, well, we ate, and I got to go shopping, and I didn't have to wait till it went to 95% off, and we took a trip. And he goes, but do you know how much? I'm like, well, I mean, you know, you've seen it. He goes, okay, all right, I can't take it. I can't take it. So he took over the books. Whoop, whoop. put it on a computer. You know, they have those QuickBooks, those programs. I don't know if you've heard of them. People can just punch stuff in and it calculates stuff. And so anyway, it's like finding, but what I'm saying is if you want to start your own business, you have a strength set, like Jen was saying, and it's a passion area and you're good at that. You are not going to be good at everything else that goes along with your business. But in the beginning, you're probably going to have to do it because you don't have money to pay somebody or you didn't marry somebody that can help you. So, you know, but that's no reason not to start a business, because the thing that will make you successful is your passion. And then as it goes along, you can. And one other thing about starting a business is so many businesses fail in the first 5 years because they not only go by like a cash register, they get like the $5,000 model that does everything for you 1,000 times, and then like in your so many coffee shops and restaurants go out of business because you can literally have $25,000 to $30,000 wrapped up in your espresso machine and your oven and your stuff that will eventually generate your income, but not immediately. And so the more stuff you can do without and buy used and save, like I was 5 years before I had a really great espresso machine, because it was a $2,500 expense, and it's still a small one. But you just can't overextend yourself in the beginning financially and because you have a really great idea. You have to start out small and work up. So anyway, I'm not sure I answered the question.
But you gave us all some good laughs and a good story.
Okay, well, I'm good for that.
Thank you.
Okay.
No, you did. So, do we have any questions on the floor yet?
Thank you for being here. I'm Dr. Nadia Korobova, and I'm a staff member here. You mentioned you use only real ingredients, so real sugar, real butter, you know, and flour and so forth, which is great because, you know, we're still trying to all eat healthy and so forth. But how do you balance, for example, this new direction, you know, people say gluten-free, you know? What if two people come to your shop and somebody's gluten-free? I know the other place that is not presented here today, but Scratch Cupcakery, they have gluten-free cupcakes. So, you know, I know it's going to be more expensive to produce it, you know, but you might attract more people. How, as a business owner, I guess, you manage that? And how do you make the decision, I will carry and I will do sugar-free, also chocolates maybe, or something like that, or I will not? Does it make sense? Okay, thank you.
Part of my past has been in regulatory. It was part of my quality assurance background. And the thing about, you know, when in my bakery, I don't do gluten-free. And you really have to be careful. And right now, the FDA just changed the regulations. And to be a gluten-free bakery or create any kind of a gluten-free product and call it gluten-free, it has to have less than, I think it's 20 parts per million of gluten. So unless you have, you know, a place where there is no wheat, you really should not be making gluten. And I think it's just, you know, as a baker, you have a responsibility, or any kind of a business person, you have a responsibility in the food industry to know what the regulations are and to check with the FDA or state regulations and find out if you're making a health claim, you really need to be careful with that.
We have, what I think has happened with gluten-free, and this is not from any research I've done, but just from being around a number of customers, is the very serious celiac gluten-free customer, 95% of the time calls me and says, do you have anything gluten-free? And I'll say, we typically have a homemade soup that's gluten-free, and typically one of our chicken salads is gluten-free, or our tuna. And sometimes we do a gluten-free dessert, but not always. And she'll say, okay, so what's in it? So I'll read the ingredient list. And then she'll say, okay, do you mind if I bring my own luncheon? Because I'm going to be with 6 friends. I'm a little nervous maybe about the mayonnaise, or a little nervous. I'm like, fantastic. Because that person has been miserable long enough, and they know their diet is so restrictive around this gluten. Kind of, you know, what's been shared is they're going to be sick. A number of people aren't celiacs. They just feel better if they don't eat a lot of wheat. So then my stuff's great for them because it doesn't have the actual wheat product in it, but it's not, you know, 20 parts per million, you know. it's a real fine line, and I think gluten-free's gotten to be a buzzword, and it's gotten to be kind of cool to be gluten-free, and that's cool. I'm good with that. I mean, we can do that, but you know. And then when people come to my dessert counter and they say, "Do you have anything sugar-free?" and I've never done sugar-free because we haven't figured out how to make that taste good and what to use. But that is an area that we could probably look into. It's not a lot of people, but some severe diabetic people would ask for that. So.
Do we have another question from the floor, or shall I continue on? Okay, be thinking of your questions. They're here for you. So, how would one go about building a loyal customer base for the business? Or would you like a different question? Any of you that would like to start?
Well, since I'm fairly new in the community, I really had to do, I took my products out and I started with farmers markets, and I was able to tell, it was interesting with Cedar Falls and Waterloo, they're different customers, you know, and I would go to a farmers market in Waterloo, and you know, I would sell a certain kind of bread or pastry product, and then I would go to Cedar Falls and it would be completely different. So it was really just, you know, building a Facebook page and going out in farmers markets, and my collaboration with some other business people in the community that have helped me, you know, build a customer base.
Thank you.
As I was thinking about and preparing for today, I found it interesting when I did start the business. I was just into trying to get my cookies into every person's hands that I could see or get in contact with. And so that, I mean, that's kind of a hard thing to take on, but really I didn't do any advertising, kind of like Chris, didn't have the budget for that, so I really relied on word of mouth. But the main things to take away from that is that you always provide excellent customer service, and you always have your product taste the same every single time, no matter what. And I think if you follow those two rules, you'll build the loyal customer base because they know that you're the same every time, that you're going to be great to me every time. I truly enjoy when people call me for orders and they, you know, want to ask questions and things like that. I like to get to know my customers because I don't have a shop like Chris does. It's kind of fun to listen to people say, well, I don't know, I like this cookie or that cookie, or trying to figure out if you're having a very large event, what is a good idea of how many of each kind of cookie. I don't know why that thrills me, but it does. Because I want people to really enjoy, you know, what they're having. So I think, you know, so building your customer base is it's kind of like stair steps. You just kind of have to keep building, but you just being consistent is probably the best way to do it.
Happy customers will share the news, and women in particular talk about like food, hair, kids. That's about the main three. Guys will talk about a good burger, probably, but maybe beer. I'm not sure. I'm not quite in that world as much. But women talk to each other a lot. So if they have a good experience, my husband has always said, you know, people don't always remember what they ate, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And, you know, when you go into certain places, you have a certain feeling about that place, and you're not sure why. And it's probably something to do with your waitress or your waiter, and you're not going to go back if the product isn't good on your plate. If you had a bad meal, you might try it again. But if you have a good meal and get a good vibe, you probably will share that with a friend. So making sure that you're having a good day, and if you're not, that you fake it till you make it, because as a business owner, if you have employees, they will pick up that, and then that will cascade into your customer base. So you find a way to have good days consistently, and your customer base will grow because they want to come and feel good, and they might be having a bad day, and maybe you can be an encouragement to them. So,
Thank you, Chris. So we'll start with you on this question. To whom do you look for inspiration?
That's a good question. I was so passionate about raising healthy kids, and I'm not sure where that came from. I mean, I don't know a lot of moms that want to raise unhealthy ones, but it was just written on my heart that I want to see my kids do well and thrive, and everything kind of spun out of that. And I knew if my kids were going to thrive, I had to have a good marriage, and so we work on our marriage. And so my inspiration probably from my family of origin, and also just, I don't know, it's just kind of written on my heart that you have a lot of control and a lot of power over your attitude and the direction of your life and the thoughts that you choose. And so, I mean, I'm a Christian, and so I get inspiration from my quiet times, from the Lord, and also from my family. I suppose that would be the main ones. And then I get a lot of energy from people. I'm highly extroverted. That's another thing. I'm sure you guys have taken some personality tests along the way. And an extrovert means you get energy from being with people. And an introvert means you get energy from being alone in the most basic sense. And so as you think about if you're going to be a business owner, if you're an extroverted person and you create an environment, like I'm in an extroverted environment where there's customers and employees around all the time, these gals are more in an introverted environment where they're creating their product alone, but then they're extroverted when they go to sell. But that's a really important thing to think about. My husband's not extremely, but he's pretty introverted. So people actually take energy from him. And he has to get alone to get re-energized. So as you kind of think about your business and how that's going to play out, that's an important thing to think about. But
To whom do you look for inspiration?
Actually, I got a lot of inspiration in my past from my father. He always worked so hard, and he really, truly was an artisan. Being in the cheese business and being a cheesemaker, and in the days before there was a lot of refrigeration and before there was a lot of technology in his industry, he really had to know what he was doing, and making a high quality product was so important to him. So, I see where I've ended up, and I know a lot of it came from him and his example. Now, inspiration for me, for what I'm doing currently, I follow a lot of my instructors and people that I've taken classes from over the years that are doing very well in their fields, in the fields of pastry.
I think I get my inspiration is a lot from my husband and from my children as well. I kind of have the same way as Chris does, that if you have a happy marriage and if you have happy children, everything is good. I mean, and I kind of look to them. They have, they call my car the Cookie Crave Mobile, and and they love hearing, your mom makes the best cookies ever, and so I think I get a lot of that from them, and they get a lot of joy seeing me have a dream and follow a dream. I think that's been a good thing for them, but a good thing for me too, because you can dream forever, but implementing it is the tough part. But I know, and another thing, I'll say it to Natalie at Scratch. She really was probably, I looked at her and saw what she did, and I just thought, wow, people do enjoy, home-baked goods. And so I kind of, I look to her somewhat, but she's a way different level, way different. I mean, I'm not even in near her ballpark or anything like that. But I do look at that in her personality, and I mean, she's just a very upbeat, good-hearted person. So I kind of watch and see what she's doing too.
Do we have any questions from the floor at this time?
So do you have any short-term and long-term goals or plans for your business?
I just take 1 year at a time. I ask my staff to commit for 1 year, which is 10 months at the barn. And we reevaluate things after every season. And when it's not fun anymore and it's just lots of hard work, that'll be my short-term plan, because that'll be the last season we have. I hope it doesn't come to that, but there's a lot that goes into being a small business owner, and even when it's making money, it's like any other job. Because you give so much of yourself, you have to really like it / love it. So I honestly, when we started this, I had no idea that it would be 12 years, and the 12 years has gone like that. And I can see as my children are older and they really require less of me, and with one not even being at home anymore, I can see I have actually more energy coming back for the business because I'm not pulled so much in other directions. So I don't know how long, but a while more.
I'm actually at a point in my business. I remodeled. When we moved into our home, we remodeled the kitchen so that I could run my business out of our kitchen. And I've really pretty much outgrown my kitchen at this point. So, in the coming months, I need to make a decision. Either moving to a commercial space or just continue as I have. But so that's really where I am, and trying to decide what part of what I'm doing I want to pursue.
I'm in the same position as Vicki, really. I'm trying to decide what is my next step, because I'm in different spots. My kids are still pretty young, and I'm not having the energy that I need to have. So my husband and I are currently, we are looking at things and trying to figure out what could we do differently, or could we sell the product differently, or so we are in the midst. We do kind of a year by year as well, and this is our time right now to discuss those kinds of questions and for our family what's best.
Other questions? I saw several hands go up before.
So I know Vicki went out in social, or met people before and used the grain. So how did you guys go out and network so that you guys made really good connections? Because I think Chris said something about being making good connections has helped you be super successful now. How did you go out and network?
I think one of the interesting things that I've picked up when Catherine asked me to speak and I was kind of putting everything together, I have over 10 women who are entrepreneurs who helped me with Cookie Crave. And Chris being one of them. I found that fascinating because I had not put all of that together, but I had women along the way, not that I didn't have men too, but I had women entrepreneurs who had said, well, I'll help you with promotion. So people, networking, through the chamber is great, but you'll find that you'll have personal relationships that you didn't even know, that you realize that can help, or that will know that next step person that can help you. So it's kind of just always being open, not always going through the regular channels maybe of networking either, but even my customers. I've had customers who have, brought cookies, for me to an event to get me, me into the door and that kind of thing. So you're just always you got to think outside of the box, I guess is what I'd say.
When I started the barn, I had a neighbor we lived on the acreage 4 years, and I had a neighbor who's a retired nurse, and she said, you know, I love to bake cinnamon rolls. And I said, you do? And she said, uh-huh. And I said, okay. And so she was my cinnamon roll, caramel roll person for 3 years, and she moved. And I asked if we could pretty please have her recipe. And then I found my next baker. I've had, in 12 years, I've only had 3 people do the rolls, because they usually stick with me. And a lot of times people that bake have friends that bake. And you say, hey, do you know? And at the barn, because we're only open 4 days a week, we have people do their specialty once a week. So I don't have to have all kinds of things coming in all the time. And then I have a couple gals on staff that we have a little kitchenette that we do some cooking too. So yeah, it's just kind of, if you start out small, which I can't stress enough, and way littler than you think you want to, the people that are attracted to your business as it's small and attracted to you will be the people that are your resource people and are your best help. Don't put a bunch of pressure on yourself to hire 5 people that you don't know, because in a way you marry your people. I mean, it's random, but you want to have a connection with the personality, easy to jive with, you know, even your vendors. There's one vendor, oh, never mind. I'm going to keep it positive. 99% of my vendors are awesome, so I won't tell you about that one guy.
That's after we're off film, at the back with the cookies. I think we had a couple more questions from the floor. Yes, no? All right, well, we're almost out of time, so, yep, we'll go ahead and take this last question, and then I'll finish up with a question.
My question's not the best one to end on, but you've mentioned that maybe you haven't had a lot of criticism along the way, but perhaps you have, and how do you deal with that? How do you deal with someone being unhappy with the experience? And I know I would probably, I kind of crumble and think, oh no, it's horrible, I have to end this, So how do you deal with criticism?
I think that I think all criticism is constructive. I mean, you learn; it's a learning, and the one thing you have to realize when you're in the food business is, taste is subjective, and so not everyone is going to love my bread. Not everyone is going to like my chocolate. They might prefer someone else's. So I think if someone comes to you with a specific complaint, I think you need to do what you can to try and change it and fix it. And I want to add one thing about the networking, your question. If you're in the food industry, there are a lot of professional associations, and I think that's a great way to network too. For example, there's a group I belong to, it's the Bread Bakers Guild of America, and in that, there's a constant conversation. They have, there's an email, we have an email sharing, and you can go on there and ask any question, and no question is too ridiculous. And when you're first starting out, you have so many questions. And so I think, looking at professional associations in the area that you're interested in, whether it's baking or something else. But, look at professional organizations. A lot of time there are people that are at your level and in your place.
This is a little bit of a random, but one thing that I thought about when I was thinking about this food is, what are the restaurants and where are the places that I like to go and why? I'm thinking, okay, well, when I was in high school, it was Chi-Chi's, because they would bring you as many chips and salsa as you could eat. Now it's, Carlos, whatever. Okay, Texas Roadhouse. What do you get there? Rolls, that honey butter. Nobody else is doing honey butter, and nobody else is letting you put peanuts on the floor. I mean, that's awesome. And then other places where you get something that maybe you didn't have to specifically pay for. Olive Garden, you can have unlimited salad and breadsticks. Okay, you can only eat so much salad and you can only eat so much breadsticks, but it's the idea. They'll bring you as much as you can eat. So I'm thinking, okay, so what can my little Barn Happy do that'll be a customer service thing that not everybody else does? Well, I found a coffee vendor in Des Moines, who's actually a friend of mine, who started a roastery about the same time I opened the barn, and he flavors coffees in the most amazing flavors. They're so fresh. I get them fresh twice a week, and I thought I can offer an unlimited cup of coffee, because I was actually here a year before Panera. And so you can have the yummiest pecan sticky bun, almond amaretto. You can have the house. You can have flavors in decaf that you can hardly get anywhere. And you can have as much as you want to drink for $2. Like, you can't just go do that anywhere. And then twice a year, I offer an open house, once in the spring and once in the fall. And I bring in all kinds of food samples, and it's free coffee all day. So when you're doing food, you don't always have a ton of overhead in the actual food. Your overhead's in your employees and in your electric and in your building. And so when you can think about what little hook can I give that not everybody else is doing, you're going to have a loyal following in no time, because everybody likes the idea of getting something for nothing. So.
Thank you. All right. Last question. We've got a number of students in this particular audience. So what would you recommend? What advice would you give to the students in the audience for a class that they should take? If they're interested in being an entrepreneur, what do you think would be a benefit? Or if they're interested in doing food and maybe a food business, what would you recommend to them?
Is there a class called Know Yourself? Take that class. You just have to know who you are. Are you outgoing? Are you introverted? Do you love mass production? Do you want to do something totally unique to you? I mean, and I don't know that there's personality tests, and I don't even know if it's a psychology class, but before you spend a whole bunch of energy trying to develop a food business, figure out what turns your crank and what makes you happy, because that's what you'll stick with. Not what makes your dad happy, not what your parents or your aunt think you should do. Like, what could you be passionate about over a long period of time? And you have to consider how you are wired. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And then develop a business plan from there. And I'm sure there's classes that can help you do some of that self-discovery, becoming more self-aware. And when you're young, a lot of times you just do the next thing. I got to get with my advisor, and I have to do this. And you don't really think about, well, what do I really like? So anyway, whatever class that is, take that.
I think you can gain some really good, insights just through part-time employment, or in the food world, a lot of times you can do what's called a stage. If food is what interests you, a stage is where you go into a bakery or a restaurant, and you basically volunteer to work, but you get some experience, and you can see, do I really like this? And I think it doesn't hurt if you think food is what you like, or baked goods are what you like, and it can be in any field. It doesn't hurt to go out and work in that field, even if you're doing just the most menial task. I think it really helps to experience and see what it is.
I agree with both of these ladies, especially with knowing yourself, and then the working part-time or trying something to see if you like it. I guess my third aspect of it would be the business aspect of it, because not that you have to be an accountant or you have to be a math wizard or anything like that, but you really should know some form of your accounting system, and knowing what's coming in and knowing what's going out, and having a handle in your mind, always kind of knowing in the back of your mind, even though someone else may be in charge of it for you, you still need to be in control and know. So those would be some classes that I would strongly say you should take.
Let's thank Chris, Vicki, and Jen for their wonderful information today and their lovely treats that you're about to enjoy.